Productions presents
Copperheart Shattered Echoes contains mature language and situations geared toward an adult audience. For specifics and trigger warnings, please see the show notes. Welcome back to Copperheart Shattered Echoes. This episode is sponsored by patron Jared Mosman and co-produced by George Pecenica. Shattered Echoes is an anthology of tales that can be enjoyed individually or in order. Some will continue where the series left off. Some will jump ahead in time. Some will serve as prequel stories for our heroes and villains. Some may take place in parallel realities. Some may cross over or connect with other stories. And some may introduce new characters and situations to the Copperheart lore because, let's face it, the Visitor made a lot of ripples in reality. And now you get to explore them. This episode is entitled The Historian, and I'm proud to say that it was written by a longtime patron, fan, and actor within the series. It takes place over the lifespan of a resident of EL-27, the home bunker of Jack Sellers and Heather Kaminski. Agnes Green may have seemed like an ordinary resident, but she was born on the outside and lived to see surface day. Framed within the story of a freelance journalist seeking to follow Green's trail, The Historian is a superb look into bunker life from the perspective of someone who wasn't aware of the machinations of the visitors and their reality-bending threats. This episode features the voice talents of Jess McCoy as Agnes Green, Yasha Mikolajczak as Rose Sheridan, and Jordan Kalina as Peacekeeper Shepard. And yes, that name should be familiar to anyone who remembers the episode Luna. This episode was written by Robin. After the episode, please keep listening for our cast and production credits, and our tribute to the Patreon family who has supported the show, enjoying early releases and other benefits. You can find out how to join our Patreon family, as well as learn about my other productions at riggstories.com.
I'm Rose Sheridan, last known survivor of the EL-27 surface day disaster. And I suppose now the self-appointed deputy historian. Or at least the keeper of the green journals. I had no idea this is what she was planning. I could not have fathomed that she'd do something like this. But she did. And I need to find out why. I need to pick up where she left off. I found a peacekeeper. Maybe he can get me as far as Nevada, if not all the way to Area 51. Well, anyway, I've assembled these parts from her journals. Maybe they'll give me a clue where to begin. Alright, here we go. Here. My name is Agnes Green.
Agnes Green. And I am, well, let's say I am of an experienced age. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and I have spent nearly all my life in United States Reconstruction Bunker EL-27 in East Lynn, Illinois. I have been keeping a record of my life in EL-27 since the day I arrived, both to teach younger generations born in the bunker about life before the mishap, and also in the hopes of informing others in the future of humanity's time spent underground during these decades of nuclear winter. If you have been given or presented with one of the copies made of my records, this will serve as the opening entry, introducing myself as the bunker's historian. This will also be the last entry that I will write in EL-27. Tomorrow is the 12th of September, 2015. Surface Day. The doors to the outside world will finally open. And those of us who have chosen to leave the bunker will start a new life outside, in a world we have been kept safe from for decades. When the mishap happened, I was 10 years old. My mother, a scientist, and my father, a high school English teacher, and I were evacuated to EL-27. Naturally, after all these years, many details of that day have faded from my memories. But I do remember my mother pulling me out of school and telling me, after I got in the car, that we'd have to leave our home and go and live somewhere new. A place underground where we'd be safe. The other memory that's remained over the decades, the one that's so clear it could have happened yesterday, is one specific point from the car journey to EL-27. At that point, we'd left the city of Chicago behind, and we were driving down a road somewhere, surrounded by fields. My mom had been driving, but she pulled over, and my dad got into the driver's seat instead. Mom was crying. She had been trying her best not to, but I'll never forget her face as she sat in the passenger seat. I didn't understand why my mom was crying, and why my dad was so quiet. I was scared. I had no idea where I was going or why we had to leave our home, and my parents couldn't do anything to make me feel better. Little did I know at the time that their entire lives were falling apart, and they were trying to keep it together for my sake. The new place, this safe place underground, that would be our new home, was, of course, USRB EL-27. My mother, Dr. Elizabeth Green, was a horticulturist. Yes, I know, a horticulturist who married someone with the name Green. After we'd arrived at our quarters in the bunker on that traumatic day, she sat me down and quietly explained to me that she was the reason we had a place in USRB EL-27. She was the reason we were safe. I still didn't understand. Not until I grew a little older and learned about the mishap. Naturally, I didn't understand much about her work as a small child. She told me that she looked after the plants and helped them grow better so they could give us more food. As an adult, I understood that she had been very well known and respected in her field in the years before the mishap, and had been at the forefront of some new research into hydroponics. I didn't see much of her during the first few weeks of our new lives in the bunker, as she was putting her research into work and ironing out problems that kept arising. It took many years for me to understand how difficult that period must have been for her. The stress she must have been under, and the incredible weight of her new responsibilities. But at the time, her absence did nothing to help me settle into my new surroundings. Around 10 years after Bunker Day, my dad and I had a conversation during which he told me that I spent much of my first weeks and months in the bunker, hiding under my bed for hours on end, and not wanting to talk to anyone. I must have blocked out most of my memories of that time, because even after only a decade in the bunker, I honestly couldn't remember doing that at all. My dad also had an important role in the bunker's society, as he was assigned a job as a teacher in the high school, trying to give some stability to all those other kids who, like me, would never see their old schools, teachers, or friends ever again. I started attending the bunker's elementary school a few days after our arrival. The plan must have been to try and get back to some sense of normality as soon as possible for the children, while also freeing up their parents to attend to their new duties in the bunker. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been during that period for those teachers to try and carry on as normal in front of classrooms of confused and frightened children. Dad never spoke about it for as long as he lived. At the time of the mishap, I had already been keeping a journal for a couple of years. I loved to write. I was always making up little stories with accompanying doodles, and getting in trouble at school for daydreaming in class. I've never been able to go back to the first few months' worth of entries from when we arrived in the bunker. I know where those journals are, and copies have been made of them by others. But even now, with our time underground coming to an end, I've never been able to reread any of them. Not that I haven't been curious at all over the years, but I think some memories are best left buried. I would rather not return to those words of a lost little girl who was trying to make sense of her entire world being turned upside down, when the adults she trusted couldn't explain to her what had happened. I understand it now. How do you explain a global nuclear mishap to an elementary school child? They told me that if I were to go outside, I'd get sick, so I had to stay in the bunker, where I'd be safe. But I thought, what about my friends? They weren't in the bunker. Wouldn't they get sick?
We
were the angels descending from light.
are the demons who crawl up from the dark.
Who crawled up from the dark.
We
We
were the clockwork
were the
carpenters.
clockwork
We
carpenters.
are the scions of time and space.
We were the wraiths and spirits and legends.
We are the monsters, ghosts, and myths.
We
were
were before death.
We are after life.
We
were the
were
destroyers
destroyers
of
of infinite realms.
We
Are the
creators of life itself.
We
Were nothing.
were nothing.
We are everything.
We
We are human.
Copperheart Shattered Echoes, a Copperheart anthology series by Michael J. Rigg.
Some years later, when I was old enough to understand, my mother told me that she, my father, and I had originally been due to be evacuated to a different bunker. BV-138, she told me, up in northern Illinois, in a place called Bull Valley. The name of that place didn't mean anything to me at the time, and it means even less to me now after all these years. But it was closer to our home in Chicago than EL-27 was. My mother told me she had been needed more in EL-27, and that made sense to me, remembering how little I saw of her in those early days of our life underground. The years went on, and my memories of the outside world grew more and more hazy. Even rereading words I had written when I was younger, and the memories still relatively fresh, describing the sun and its warmth, the colors and smells of all the different flowers in the botanic garden my mother always used to take us to visit, the chaos of the traffic in downtown Chicago. It became more and more difficult to remember what life had been like before. I was only a small child when I left the outside world. The life depicted in the movies and TV shows in the bunker's video library naturally didn't reflect the ever-dimming memories I had of my childhood. But instead, They reflected a life that had been taken away from me. A world that had been forever lost. Now all I knew was the grayness of the bunker, the artificial lighting, and the same constant temperature. There were no more crowds, no more traffic, no more sunshine. No parks, no cities, no oceans, no new friends, no moving away to college, no beautiful wedding. Growing older meant gradually coming to terms with more experiences and milestones being forever lost to me. The journey of accepting the constraints of a life I never could have imagined for myself as a child wasn't always easy. I never wanted these records to focus solely on me. Of course, I have been the person responsible for maintaining these documents kept on life within our bunker over the years, as it grew from my own personal journals into a collective project. The title of historian was originally given to me as part of an affectionate joke by one of my close friends, many decades ago by now, which very quickly stuck to me. In fact, it became a sort of rank bestowed upon me by our military leader, Colonel Hayden. They used to do that a lot. Find something you did and stuck a title to it, because everyone had to have a title, a purpose, to give a purpose to our lives. I like to think that I became a respected member of society in this bunker, and many people have wished to contribute to these records over the course of the last few decades. However, I am but one of exactly 2,140 people here, just a small part of what makes the society of EL-27 what it is. That said, this background, how I was initially meant to spend most of my life in a different bunker, goes some way to explain the reason why these records exist at all. When I was small, before we entered the bunker, I wanted to be a librarian. As well as having a love of writing, I also loved the idea of working in a place where I would be surrounded by books every day, in a building full of stories and knowledge, where the shelves contained endless worlds in which I could lose myself. Of course, that never came to be, as the collection of books in EL-27 was much more limited than in the library of my childhood memories. The books here have been showing their age for some time now, the more popular paperbacks having been repaired several times over the years, their pages showing the marks unintentionally or absent-mindedly left behind by countless people within the bunker. Instead of a librarian, I became one of EL-27's elementary teachers, following somewhat in my father's footsteps, though I chose to teach younger children. Even with my advanced age, I still continue to teach classes, and have watched new generations grow up with no experiences of their own of the outside world. As Surface Day has gradually approached, more and more of my students have started asking me about the world outside the bunker. It's a mixture of typical childlike curiosity and fear, I believe, maybe one outweighing the other in many cases. I watched their eyes widen as I describe what life was like for me at their age. Or at least what I remember, aware that for them, the depiction of a pre-mishap world probably feels more like a tale from a storybook than real life. I never had a family of my own. I never got married. Not out of choice, either, but when you're living in an enclosed environment of 2,000-some people, your choices are going to be a lot more limited than they would have been in the outside world. I never had the chance to do what I saw my older cousins do before I entered the bunker. living a stereotypical high school experience I saw portrayed in all those old movies and TV shows I watched when I was younger. I did date someone briefly in my early 20s, but after only a handful of dates, he lost interest. I've had a lot of time to myself over the years, left to wonder how life would have been had I lived in BV-138. Would it have been different? How different would my path have been had the mishap never happened? It's a strange thought to have, but I like to think that somewhere out there, in a different universe, there's a version of me who had a life where she was truly happy and loved. It brings me a little comfort. Life for me within the bunker has remained somewhat static for decades. I've loved being a teacher to the children of this bunker, but the structure of my life has remained mostly unchanged for even 30 or 40 years now. In many ways, it feels as if I have grown old without growing up.
All personnel are required to move to sub-level 3 by 0630.
It's one of the more selfish reasons why I have been so dedicated to my record-keeping and documenting. It keeps my mind busy. I've wasted too much time over the years wondering about various what-ifs, and this ever-growing project of mine has kept my mind away from some darker thoughts, and more of my free time filled with the company of friends. But that's enough self-indulgence. There's a new future to think of. Tomorrow is Surface Day, and I have made the decision to leave. Many folks around my age have chosen to stay, used to our safe and comfortable lives in the bunker, not wanting to return to a world that could never match the one in our faded memories. Some younger people have chosen to stay too. Throughout their lives, they have been told that the outside world is dangerous, and unlike me, they have no memories of life on the surface. But I wish to leave, to make a fresh start, to make the most of the few remaining years that I have. My plan is to travel, to see what's become of these old United States, and to share my experiences with those who would wish to listen to an old woman and her stories. From tomorrow, we have an opportunity to create new memories and new ways of living. We can bring life back to this dead planet. But that's not the truth, is it, Agnes? My name is Agnes Green. I wish to discover the truth of what really happened in USRB EL-27 and throughout the whole United States Reconstruction Bunker Network.
Being reassigned to Operation Silver Fox.
Silver Fox, sir.
That's the only clue you're gonna get from me, Jack. If I told you everything I knew, it would influence your findings. I've cleared ARIS to share all the data with you.
This letter may or may not be accompanied by an official introduction to myself and my work over the decades in EL-27. If you have received a copy of this letter, at this point I should be traveling west from my old home in East Lynn, Illinois, to Groom Lake, Nevada, the site of USRB GL-51. It has been decided that you are to be trusted with the information in which it contains, and if you so wish, an offer will have been extended to you to join me on my long journey. I was known as the Historian in EL-27, initially a nickname that over the years grew into a much deeper sign of respect. As a project that gradually grew and grew over the decades, I kept records of my own experiences in the bunker, as well as those of other civilians. It was important to me that future generations understood what life had been like for us, what sacrifices had been made for the future of humanity, so that we didn't make the same mistakes again. The majority of the population in EL-27 were military personnel, and my record-keeping was tolerated, more begrudgingly by some than others, as long as I and everyone else involved in the project only wrote about the official record of events. No rumors or hearsay, as Hayden's subordinates kept reminding us, and, not in so many words of course, nothing that would portray the military rule of EL-27 in a bad light. So that's what we did. Officially.
Staff Sergeant John Sellers is a non-entity. He's a tool of the United States government. He is to be cared for as a tool, utilized as a tool, and once this tool has outlived its usefulness, discarded like an old tool.
Unofficially, I had my own set of notes that to this day nobody else here has ever seen, containing all the rumors and hearsay and whispers about my bunker and some other bunkers that I'd collected over the decades. It was a dangerous undertaking, especially as our AI, ARIS, began to develop a curiosity in the official project he saw me working on. The main focus of this secret project of mine was a series of possibly interlinked events in both EL-27 and GL-51, around 42 years ago. This entire time, I've never found out the truth to what exactly happened, but rumors and whispers have been secretly and very carefully circulating within certain civilian groups of EL-27 for decades.
There's some kind of visitor-initiated time paradox already fucking with reality.
It's infecting us too.
If 6 days for them is like 5 months for us.
Area 51 is a black hole.
Now, officially, of course, I don't know any of what I'm about to write, but the various rumors and stories that have reached me and recirculated within EL-27 over the years include talk of aliens somehow arriving at GL-51, or demons or angels, depending on which version of the story you've heard. All of the inhabitants of the bunker at Groom Lake somehow disappeared without going outside. And here in EL-27, 2 members of the military somehow escaped from our bunker around the same time.
Jack, what the hell are you doing? Where are you going? We can't go back to the tower.
We're going to the source.
What?
We're going to Groom Lake.
Jack.
I'm fully aware that all this sounds absurd, but I strongly believe there is no smoke without fire. Now, there may not have been aliens or demons or angels in GL-51, but something very strange happened to the people who lived there around 4 decades ago. And I have never in all these years been able to find a plausible explanation for these events. From what I gather, none of the higher-ups who were originally in communication with GL-51 have heard from that bunker since. Not the only bunker to have gone dark over the years, if some of the other stories I have heard are also to be believed. I have no doubt that the military overlords of the entire USRB network have been hiding some dark secrets from the rest of us for decades, and it feels like I have never even come close to scratching the surface. This is why I am traveling all the way to Nevada from my old home in Illinois. The story of GL-51 has haunted so many of my dreams and waking hours, consumed so many of my thoughts for over 40 years. And now I may have a chance to finally discover what really happened. I am looking for survivors from other bunkers all over the country to help me piece together this mystery by sharing anything they may have heard, however unlikely they believe it to be. If the stories from GL-51 arrived at my bunker, hopefully they found their way to others too. The military have kept us civilians in the dark for decades, for the entire time that we have been living in our respective bunkers, and it is finally time to shed some light on the events of our recent past as we collectively re-emerge into the sunlight. This will not be an easy journey for me. I may not have many years left, especially in a post-mishap world, but I decided many years ago that this is what I would do come Surface Day. I have to find out the truth. And if you wish, I invite you to come along this journey with me. Signed, Agnes Green, the historian of USRB EL-27.
I'll finish this for you, Agnes. Your path was only the beginning.
Sheridan, ready to get moving? We'll make Idaho Springs by nightfall, but we need to break camp now.
Yeah, Shepard. Let me pack up.
Well, give it 20-30 minutes and we'll have a bear sniffing around. And believe me, I am not looking forward to tussling with another one of those, so let's get moving.
Yeah. It's time to find the truth.
This episode of Copperheart Shattered Echoes was entitled The Historian. It was written by Robin and engineered by Michael J. Rigg and co-produced by George Pecenica. This episode featured the voices of
Jess McCoy as Agnes Green,
Yasha Mikolajczak as Rose Sheridan,
Jordan Kalina as the Peacekeeper Mac Shepard,
and the guest voices of David Steele as ARIS, Chris Magilton as Lieutenant Colonel Hayden, Michael Rigg as Jack Sellers, Erin King as Heather Kaminski, and Nichole Goodnight as General Hanover.
You've been listening to Copperheart Shattered Echoes, an anthology series spanning multiple ripples of existence that take place within the expanding Copperheart realities. Copperheart was created, written, and produced by Michael J. Rigg. Title theme and incidental music are by Astral Fogg. The visitor voices in the intro are by Robin Howell and Michael Rigg. To find out more about the show and other Rigg Stories Transmedia productions, including other tales inspired or touched by this production, visit riggstories.com. And please consider supporting the shows at patreon.com/riggstories or leaving us a tip at coffee.com. It's ko-fi.com.
My thanks goes out to our extraordinary family of patrons who supported the return of Copperheart and who continue to support Copperheart Shattered Echoes and the series to come. George Pecenica, Brad Mack, Delta Alpha, Eric McNeil, Jared Mosman, Irritating Fog, Michael West, Robin, Shalom West, Alan Farkas, Churlington Beescoat, Martin Saville, Michael Velez, Pack Mule, Ray Volk, Andrea Pena, Ann McMicken, George Stankow, Giannis Vestin, Jeff Fogg, Keely Wood, Michael Rodden, Rupert Fullhurst, Ryan Smith, Flub 2, Sarah Elkins, and Tim George. Thank you all very, very much, and thank you to our Iron Level patrons and our free followers as well. If you would like to join our family of supporters, get early releases of episodes, bonus content, live chats, and more, visit patreon.com/rigstories.